Welcome to Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. Now in our fifth year, bringing you topics on the mind-body-spirit connection and the tools and techniques to awaken you to higher consciousness states. I am Dr. J, your host, and my amazing co-host is Deirdre Layton. Please do share and follow. Together, we bring you grounded metaphysics where the spiritual rubber hits the road, real-life teachings and applications that are pertinent and relevant to you. Hope now that you can breathe fresh air, because we are here to give you that fresh air of real consciousness education while avoiding the hype and the fascination. We're all about assisting you to empower your life through understanding your true spiritual nature. So come aboard our beam of light and enlighten your load as we travel the ways of knowledge and wisdom for the next hour. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see you again. I'm thinking, so much that we've been putting these programs on Zoom and broadcasting them live. And yet I'm thinking that maybe one of the best ways to go about doing this is go back to Facebook Live and then just simply download and archive them to YouTube like we've been doing. So today's program, I've been thinking a lot, is about faith. And what is it to have faith? Why is it necessary? How will it benefit us? We live in a world where if we need to know something, we just simply look it up on our little iPhones or Androids or what have you. And the information is very quickly at hand. And so a lot of what we're learning to do today is run to our computer, iPad, iPhone, and so forth to look up information like how to bake a cake instead of actually baking the cake and going through trial and error. And I think a lot of what has happened is we have become maybe in some ways a little bit more lonely or a little bit more looking for answers outside of ourselves. And the great teachers will tell you that the best answers are always the ones that you have inside of yourself. Of course, sometimes that'll bring up some kind of fear or some kind of trepidation about, who you are and what you're up against in your own personal life. We all have such different lives. And yet, this element of faith is so crucial. I remember a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I did a lecture in Monterey. I think we had about 100 people in the room. And at the back of the room, this one person said, "What is faith? Why should I have it? What is it?" And so think of faith as trusting something with your heart before your mind's got it figured out. Trusting something to be true before there's physical evidence to support it. And so I don't mean blind faith like you hope it's true and you're not really invested in the outcome, as much as faith means to go within inside yourself and trust exactly what you're feeling, exactly what you're feeling. And so there's spiritual teachers will tell you that if you really, really want to evolve yourself spiritually, if you want to awaken yourself, of course, part of the goal there is by awakening yourself, you see your own illusions and you see what makes you suffer. You see what gives you heartbreak and heartache. And that as you awaken yourself spiritually, you overcome these illusions so that you live your life more contentedly, more on purpose. But at the same time, because of that, you're able to help others to do the same because of this level of achievement that you've made, but through faith. And so faith leads to a form of awareness. And awareness is not conceptual thinking. It's not the imagination. It's a state of being. So when this person at the Monterey audience asked me the question, I said that, faith is something within yourself that is kind of like a muscle that gives movement to the intuition and provides an answer within yourself that is not necessarily related at all to one's intellect or one's life experience to date. 1992 was February, and I was living in San Diego proper. And I had this very strong feeling to move to Leucadia. Leucadia was at that time a sleepy little beach town in northern San Diego County. Of course, like I said, right on the beach. And so in, I think it was April of that year, I moved to Leucadia, not knowing why, but I had this faith, this trust that it was very, very important for me to be there. And so I lived on a street called Vulcan, which parallels the train tracks, which parallels the Pacific Coast Highway, which is right next to the ocean. Lovely, lovely place. And then in August, I saw this ad in the local paper that said California Institute for Human Science opening its doors for the first time in September. Wouldn't you like to attend? So, of course, I went to the Institute, and guess what street it was on? It was on Vulcan, same street I lived on, about a mile south of me. So I thought, my goodness, this is exactly why I moved here. I can go here and study for an advanced degree in the mind-body-spirit relationship, something I really wanted to nurture in 1992. I had already been going through a spiritualist ministry, studying to become a reverend in spiritualism, but I wanted the science side of it, the philosophy side of it too. And so trusting my intuition, having faith, led me to be one of the very first students when CIHS opened its doors in September of 1992, but also being there for some 26 years now in various capacities, which many of you know I have progressed through for one good reason or another, and now enjoy a lot of interconnections with CIHS, which for right now is not so important, but more important to illustrate to you the power of faith and what it means to have faith. And so how do you and I exercise faith? How do we know we have it? Much less how do we know we have intuition by which the faith can exercise that intuition? Think of it this way. When we talk about the chakra system, which I'm sure anybody on the planet at all has certainly heard the word for, just like nowadays everybody certainly knows the word yoga, right? It's a very popular term. And so the chakras are these energy centers that are lined up more or less with the column of the spine, but they're more than that. They are the conduits of the consciousness between dimensions, between the astral self and the physical self, the astral self and the physical self. And they flow consciousness in four ways: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. The thing about the chakras is that they are beyond the limits of time and space, and yet they're unique. So that's where a lot of us are fascinated by how something can exist and yet be beyond time and space. And yet, because they flow consciousness, this is where the intuition comes in. We are all connected to each other. We're all connected to everything. There is no separation. And so in this way, our intuition is real and we can trust it. It's just that in our culture, we've not really been taught to have such faith that the intuition is real, much less to exercise the faith in the intuition, to apply it to our lives so that we could have a more eloquent expression or to see life from a much higher position, a much higher perspective than that which we had before. So having gone through the process at CIHS and thinking, oh my gosh, that's exactly why I moved there. I had no idea earlier in 1992 why. I just knew that I had to be there. Certainly some of you watching this broadcast have had some of these incredible intuitions before, but then in faith, you acted upon it and you achieved some sort of outcome that the mind could not project, that the intellect simply didn't know. It's interesting too, because I was just speaking with my wife today and a client as well about the Mayan culture. And as many of you know, I've taken people on spiritual journeys, groups of people, to the land of the Maya in Central America, which is southern Mexico, the Yucatan area, Guatemala, Honduras, and to study the cosmology of the Maya. So there's a very, very popular place in the Yucatan Peninsula called Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza now has a pyramid there that is one of the 7 wonders of the world, recently in the last few years named as one of the 7 wonders. And it's probably been in existence more than 1,000 years. And it's there's a whole cosmology and story behind that. But near the pyramid, within maybe a few hundred feet, is a ball court. Think of the ball court as a wide alley, probably 75 feet wide, with steep walls going up at least 20 feet. And the length of this corridor, open to the sky, the length of this corridor is probably 300 feet or so, the length of a football field at least. And up on the sides, up on each side, up high is a stone ring with a hole in the middle large enough for a basketball to pass through. And this ball court was a place where a supposed game was played, 7 people on each side, moving this rubber ball that was solid, weighing about 22 pounds, and they could only move it with their hips, knees, and elbows. And the idea was to get it through these rings, which were mounted up very high, probably at least 15 feet high on the wall, right, on the side. Virtually impossible. And so the idea of the ball court was relative to engaging the higher senses, in that the game was probably never really played. It was symbolic of putting your head through the galactic center, if you don't mind me waxing incredibly metaphysical. But my point is this. Our solar system winds through the galaxy in a spiral above and below the galactic plane. Every 200 million years or so, it goes around the galaxy, but about every 5,000 years, it aligns with the galactic center. And this is said to induce a transformation of consciousness. The Mayans, in their codices and their symbols, had spoken of this, that there would be times when there would be this galactic alignment that would herald a great transformation of consciousness, what we now call the golden era of inner transformation. And this is one of the reasons why I've taken at least 17 trips to the land of the Maya to explore their cosmology and how they could possibly know this. Because on December 21st, 2012, which was the end date of the Mayan calendar, the galactic center aligned perfectly with the line of the ball court. So this long corridor of the ball court next to the Pyramid of Chichen Itza, at sunrise on December 21st, 2012, the galactic center rose directly in line with the ball court. Now, how could that be? If you were a Mayan living over 1,000 years ago, you had no computers, no satellites, no algorithms, but how did you know that the galactic center would be aligning at that time if you had no such instrumentation? Much less, would you not have had some sort of awakening spiritually, that you would know where and when in space-time would be an advantageous time to incarnate? Would not the ancient Mayans have had some sort of faith embedded in their spiritual practices whereby they attained a level of awareness that they could collapse or understand space and time to know where and when would be most advantageous to incarnate? And here you and I are in this era where we can calculate astronomically exactly that that's precisely what happened on December 21st, 2012, that the galactic center did rise and directly up the ball court. But you know, the Earth orbits around the sun, and the sun has an orbit above and below the galactic plane as it goes around, and every 5,115 years is alignment. How would they know that? So my proposal is that they were very spiritually awakened people, that because of the height of their awakening, they were able to calculate in their intuition where and when in space-time this event would happen, which was also in the Mayan calendars, are the only calendars we know of that talk about when a certain consciousness should show up. So they said that at the end of this calendar, there'd be a great inner transformation. So without faith, how would they know that? How would they know that that was the right time and the right place and the right alignment? So here, pile these stones here, because about 1,000 years from now, that galactic center is going to rise right up the middle of this ball court, which signifies letting go of the ego, which signifies the inner transformation of consciousness, and so on and so forth. How would you know that? Now you might say, well, gee whiz, Dr. J, that's faith on a very big level. That's faith on a huge level of a whole civilization of Mayan people involved in this transformation of consciousness. And yet, how is it that that exists today for us to know? 60 kilometers west, and I love using the Mayans as examples of faith. 60 kilometers west of Cancun is a place called Ekbalam, E-K, and then B-A-L-A-A-M, Ekbalam, the Temple of the Stars or the Temple of the Jaguar, as you wish. And the Yucatan is flat, mostly limestone. There's no mountains. So anytime you see a lump or a hump of dirt, it's usually a pyramid. And there were these three huge humps of dirt, probably 70 feet tall. And when I went there for the first time in 2005, they had just uncovered one of these three 70-foot tall humps, and it was actually a temple, a Mayan temple. And so imagine, there's no mountains there. Where did you get the dirt, and why would you bury them? Why would you cover them over for them to be discovered in this modern era in the late 90s? Why would you do that? Because if you knew when you were going to reincarnate, if your faith had awakened you to such a level of awareness that you knew when would be a time to incarnate, you'd want to preserve something endurable through space and time so that one day you'd uncover it and you would discover it because you're meant to. Because you're meant to. So you're living in an interesting age where there are equal parts of distraction to take you away from your intuition and equal parts of intuition to take you into the inner realms. Meaning there's so many teachings that are available now through yoga and through mystical teachings and through writings and philosophies that are available from Tibet to the Maori of New Zealand to the Aboriginals of the United States to the teachings throughout Asia and so forth. All of these great teachings are now available to us. So we can either go into distraction or we can go into the intuition. But this is an era where we have an opportunity to exercise faith. And through faith, through testing with your heart, what your mind cannot yet know, not yet, you can arise to a state of being that is beyond a quantitative state. It cannot be quantified, but it is exactly revealing of the higher nature of the human being to themselves. You know, one of the greatest examples that I can give you is the flower readings that I've been doing for over 27 years now. I can't believe it, 27 years of flower readings, tens of thousands of flowers that I've read in the US, Mexico, in Canada, in Germany, in Switzerland, and Japan. And the premise of a flower reading, in case you don't know, is where, let's say 10 people are coming to this group gathering, and each one brings a flower with them that they've held, and they put the flower down on the table where I'm going to be sitting. I'm not there yet. So imagine you're looking at a table and there's 10 flowers there, and then I come and sit down, and I have no idea who brought which flower. We did this last week in Calgary with 9 people, and all these people were all new to me, never met them. And so the premise is anonymity. I have no idea who brought which flower. So I'm looking down at the flowers, and I pick one up, and I hold it. I shut my eyes. And one of the reasons I shut my eyes so I don't get any visual input from somebody in the room, because I want to preserve the anonymity, and I'll hold the flower, and I'll give a reading and a healing based on what I feel. So I don't know whose flower it is, but the readings are very, very accurate, right down to past lifetimes and birthmarks on the body. And the point is not that I'm intuitive, the point is that we all are. It's to show that through trust and faith, we can see much more than one would normally see. So this one flower I held up and I said, oh, you have some sacred sigils in your life. Well, a sigil is simply a symbol that has geometric properties that are very energetically active. At the end of the evening, people can reveal who they were or not. You know, they can preserve the anonymity by not saying anything, or they can say, yes, I had the rose. So this woman walks up to me at the end of the flower reading last Friday, and she pulls up her sleeve, and on her sleeve are these symbols of the chakras geometrically laid out, which is a set of sigils. So how would I possibly know that? And this happens over and over and over again. So just to remind you, this show today is about faith. And if I don't put myself at risk, because I don't know who I'm reading for, and I've not met any of these people last week. So by putting myself in a position of faith, I can help people to understand that the intuition is real and that you can see things that are fundamental to helping that person empower their lives. Because what I say is meant to empower and uplift. So I will talk about in a group full of people things that are very appropriate, but also very relevant to that person and very exact. And so the premise is everyone's intuition is on 24/7. Everyone has chakras. Everyone's intuition is working just fine. But it's like a muscle that's not yet been cultivated in many people, because a lot of people don't see the benefit of trusting the intuition to apply to have a higher perspective of how things work. People normally think, well, it's just for me to make more money or have a better relationship. But actually, what really happens is you start to just know yourself better. That's how it really works. So by applying the premise of a flower reading, by trusting more within your own feelings, you start to see things more as they are, or you start to have a better perspective of the things in your life, because your faith is telling you one thing, but your very fine logical mind might be telling you something else that's not necessarily so faith-based as much as fact-based. Yes, it can be very difficult. Yes, there is a margin of error. And yes, each one of us has to apply that faith to our lives. We cannot just require ourselves to only trust someone else's intuition, but rather employ ourselves to trust our own intuition as best we can, as best we can. So that's where the work is. You know, faith is a singularly intimate event where you trust with your heart what your mind cannot yet know. You know, I'm putting together a series called Awakening the Master Within. And it's a 6-module online series coming out very soon. And it will be recorded for future events should you decide to take it up later and you play this much later after we've gone live. And it is a way to access the inner master through faith, and with series of exercises and workbooks and assignments and things like that, in addition to the online Q&A. But I felt it necessary to teach more about faith, because without faith, it's almost impossible to grow spiritually. So a person might say, well, why would I want to grow spiritually? You know, how would it benefit me to do that? Because we live in what we call an illusion. The illusion is that we're separate from each other, when even science is showing that there is no separation, that, you know, we really do live, that we are all connected. So the intuition, like for instance, if I'm doing flower readings, I have no idea who brought which flower, and I hadn't met any of these people beforehand. And so as I'm seriously trusting, my eyes closed, really trusting what I feel on that flower, I'm talking about that person's strengths and weaknesses, again, in an appropriate format for a group, but to show that the intuition is real, and to show that by trusting our feelings, we really can access much, much higher parts of our being that's not related only to our intellectual knowledge and experience. So that's kind of heavy, because where do you start? Where do you start? Well, for one thing, with this radio program, you know, what would it be like to really trust your feelings on any given subject? And it can be just about any subject that I can think of, whether it's intimate with or familial, or whether it's work related or school related or social related. Can be just about any platform that you can go into your intuition and trust what you feel, then apply what you know. Trust what you feel, then apply what you know. So it doesn't mean you're going to be Professor Xavier of the X-Men and just all of a sudden be able to do this and just know. But it does mean that you can live a more empowered life. Now, for those of us that are very left-brained and, you know, very much analytical, that can be kind of a challenge to have trust and faith, because we want to guarantee how things are going to work out. We would love to know beforehand how things are going to work out. And we want some guarantees. The thing about metaphysics is it's not necessarily a guarantee, but an optimization. So when you live a life of faith and you're really trusting what you feel, you tend to optimize your path through life. But sometimes it won't be what you think needs to be guaranteed. Like, I know I'm going in this direction. And then your faith says, no, you should go in that direction. I grant you, it can be very, very, very difficult. You know, I just did a reading for a lovely person and gave her some revelatory information. And I named some very exact dates in her past that was pertinent to where she is now, how it affected where she is now. Now, how would I know that about her past? How would I know with such exact dating for this time period that she could tell me afterwards? How would you know that that was exactly when XYZ happened in my life? It's because I'm looking for those elements that would help this person to empower themselves. That's my motivation. And yet, how would I know without faith? I have to trust what my feelings are telling me. In a flower reading, I put myself at risk because in so doing, I'm proving that the intuition is real because of the exact nature of the information that I'm giving. When I train my students in integrative chakra therapy, I have over 500 students and graduates in the integrative chakra therapy program in the US and Canada. And by the way, my website is www.lightnews.org. Light News, LIGHTNEWS.org. Please go there and check it out. There's a lot about integrative chakra therapy, blogs, the radio show, and so forth. So within integrative chakra therapy, my practitioners do have to run energy. They have to allow energy to flow through them and make assessments as to where it's going, what it's doing, how it's working. But then when the healing portion is over and the person is sitting up on the table, my practitioners will say, okay, here's what's going on and why. Here's what you can do about it. And here's how to go about doing it. And so the reason for that is that it's not enough to just only to give great information. Or rather, excuse me, I got that backwards. It's not enough to just only do great healing, but to give the person some kind of tool or self-empowerment technique by giving them a live assessment of the healing. It's not an intuitive reading. It's an assessment based on the healing that passed through them. But without faith, almost impossible. I mean, how do my practitioners know which chakra is which one's dominant, which one's strong, which one's weak? How do they know that? In the same way that I do the flower reading, in the same way that I could know 5.5 years ago or whatever that is for a certain person, in the same way that I would know certain things, I'm only trusting and having faith in my intuition, and I'm employing it like a muscle. And anybody can do the same thing. You may do it differently, but the process is the same. It's opening up your heart and trusting what you feel. I hope you can take my 6-module course on awakening the master within, because we will go through in a very safe way how to access the faith, how to trust the feelings, how to get to the point of awakening the master within through your intuition so that you do see your life more clearly, more eloquently, more fully. So let me just take a look here. I made some notes, so if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to look because I've got a computer screen in front of me like most of you do all the time. What's the difference between faith and intellect? So faith is trusting with your heart what your mind can't yet know. It will, but not yet. So intellect is a body of knowledge that you already have that expresses through the mind. So you have a certain number of years of experience. You have certain things you have accrued to yourself, maybe academic knowledge, maybe life experience, and so forth. And then faith is going beyond that. Faith is going into a qualitative state that cannot be quantified and saying, okay, my feelings tell me. And, you know, that's really been marginalized a lot in our society because trusting the feelings is not very scientific. And yet there's so many scientific experiments that prove that our intuition is real, that it's not fake, it's not going away anytime soon. that we really are spiritual beings having a physical existence, not the other way around. But unless you have faith, how are you going to know? Unless you develop that muscle, how are you going to know? That's why people like me do a lot of spiritual counseling. I have been for over 30 years now. So people are welcome to book private sessions with me. I have clients all over the planet where we work together in person or by remote, by internet, by phone, doesn't matter. But it's the same process. I had a lovely woman contact me from Melbourne, Australia about a month ago, and we met on the computer through Skype, and I did a reading with her, and she was just astounded how I could possibly know this. So it's not so much about me personally as all I'm doing is trusting in faith what my intuition is revealing to me, how I can help this woman empower her life. Your intuition is working just the same. It's open, it's on 24/7, we never close. But whether you trust that intuition or not, that's another thing. Is there any science behind it? Yeah, yeah. And what's happening through faith is you're starting to view the astral dimension, a dimension beyond time and space. This is where so many people go when they pass away. They go into this dimension that's beyond time and space and yet still physically exist, or still exists rather. I shouldn't say physically because it's transphysical. So we have a lot to learn. But how do you exercise faith? How does that muscle move the intuition? Trust what you feel, apply what you know. Imagine that you are your own best friend, and that as you close your eyes and you ask yourself a question, even now, formulate a question in your mind. Whatever that is, should I get groceries today? Or what about this person or that event? And so just frame the question and get into this heart space right here, into the heart space. And breathe in and out through your heart. And then ask the question, whatever that is. And let the answer appear maybe like the sun rises in the east. It just comes. It just comes up. Maybe it's not the big blue flashing light. Maybe it's a nuance. Maybe it's a little gentle puff of inspiration that comes in. Everybody's intuitive faculties are different. So embrace the way it works for you. Some people's intuition and faith sees things. Some just know. Some can hear. Some can feel. It's different. So embrace the way that it works for you. And of course, I am happy to help you in any way I can to be able to fully utilize the power of your own intuition through faith. Faith is crucial. I'll say it one more time for emphasis. Without faith, it's almost impossible to grow spiritually. It is absolutely essential that we have faith in order to grow spiritually. But when you grow spiritually, you start to see things more as they are. Your awareness and your perspective shifts dramatically upwards. You begin to see why things happen the way they do, how things happen the way they do. And it actually shifts the course of your life, which has happened many times in flower readings, over the tens of thousands of flower readings. There's so many people that were just amazed at how I could possibly know these things. But at the same time, remember, it's about showing that person that their intuition is working just fine, and that by employing it, they can see their life in a much greater detail and much greater perspective, strengths and weaknesses, and so forth. So I don't see anybody coming on, and I'm fine with that. So I think that for now, I will leave you with that. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me through my website, www.lightnews.org, www.lightnews.org, lightnews.org. We have a Facebook presence, a Twitter presence, a LinkedIn presence, an Instagram presence. We have so many ways that you can connect with us. There's also phone number and email as well. But the website will give you a lot of information. I do travel. Next week, I'm in Japan for about 5 days to meet with the board of directors over there at one of my teachers. It's called the Genja, which is a very holy place, a holy temple, a shrine. And it's connected to the California Institute for Human Science. And I will be traveling to Calgary again and to other places as well. So keep up with my schedule if you like. And there's lots of offerings that are available to you. There's a class starting at CIHS next week called Toward a Super Consciousness that anybody can take, and I'm happy to teach you. So it's been a real pleasure to be sitting with you today on Light News Radio, Realms of Self-Empowerment. I'm your host, Dr. J, and my amazing co-host, which will be on soon, her name is Deirdre Layton. And so, as always, may the principles of harmlessness and compassion be the ever-present, ever-constant guide of your every intention, of your every thought, and of your every action. And so it is, and so it shall be. It is done. Stay attuned, everyone, and thank you for watching.